My name's Gary Courage and I'm a highways operator who works for Essex Highways.
Coward.
Go on. No need for that, sir, is there?
Just put the camera down and I'll go. And just the situation will thingy. Thank you, you four.
Part of my job on Tye Road, which is off the Elmstead Market bypass, was part of the road closure, which is myself and one of my operatives. I was at one side and he was at the other side. And for the whole of the 27th of that day, that was our task for that day. The reason that we won the road closure that day is because the guys were doing road patching on the whole of that road, and the road had to be closed down completely, and myself and my colleague were gate operators for the day while they were carrying out the repairs on the road. Whilst I was on the road closure, a black BMW turned up. As I got out the vehicle to put my PPE kit on, I went to explain to the driver the reason why the road closure was closed, but before he could give me the chance to do that, he started going off on one, calling me all the names under his son, swearing, constantly barraging swear words at me all the time, and he kept getting out of the car and he was swinging punches like that, pushing me. Then he got back into his car, then he was going to threaten, then he kept saying to me, I'm going to fight you, knock you out, this and all that things, and then he kept getting out the car, doing that, and then he got back into his car and he was revving his engine up and he says, can you move the cones? And I explained to the gentleman, I'm not standing in front of the vehicle, putting my life at risk while you're sitting revving your car up. That's when he got back out of the car and chucked the cones at me. And then he drove off, and the only thing I didn't have at the time was because the other camera was down on the other road enclosure, and as soon as he'd gone, I phoned my supervisor, who straight away sent another camera out for me. Whilst I was sitting in my vehicle, I noticed in my mirror that the black BMW was approaching the road closure from the opposite direction. As that was happening, my colleague was coming round the corner in the van. So I got out my van. As I got out my van, the guy in the black BMW started going off on one, swearing and shouting at me because I hadn't got out the van quick enough. But I explained to the gentleman that I had to put my PP on before I could get out of the van. And at the same time this was happening, Ian Monk was getting out of his van with the camera to come across to where we were. And after that, that was recorded on the body cam, all the shouting and swearing at the same, that was happening.
Here, come on. Here.
Get out of my face, sir!
Or what?
Yeah, oh, there you go!
Oh,
there's no need for that, sir, is there?
Ring the police!
Well, we will do, because we've got...
Ring them!
Yeah, we've got this one thing. There's no need for that, sir, is there? There's no need.
You should have got out and took the car down.
I was about to get out, sir.
What was you doing?
Putting my hard hat on, because I've got to have my hat. Yeah.
Look at that.
You have a nice day, sir.
I'll be back in about 2 hours. If you're here, I'm going to knock you out.
While this was all ongoing, I felt very anxious and upset, and I felt as though I went into defensive mode because the barrage I was getting away with, I was being threatened. And at the time, I could not remember what I'd actually said to the gentleman at the time, and I think one of my biggest worries was that I might have swore at him or said something I shouldn't have said, and I wouldn't know how the company would take that, not being negative towards the company, anything like that. That's how I felt at the time. But because obviously at the time I felt as though I was going to get hit by the gentleman, so I went into defensive mode, and that was my biggest worry. Felt the whole of that, and that's nothing against the company, anything like that at all. That was my biggest worry about what I said. After reviewing the footage, I'm thankfully and pleased that I hadn't said anything that upset the gentleman to actually make the situation even worse than it already was. And after that, I sat down with the company and discussed the whole situation after viewing the footage with them, and the police are involved now, and what the police are saying, the investigation is going on. They give me the three options, which was court, a conditional charge, or a letter of apology, and we're going for the conditional charge, which is what the way forward. But obviously with the police admit that's ongoing, which could take quite a while at the minute, and what the police said that he'll be done for common assault, because that's what it's classed as at the time being. Yeah.
Is there anything that you reflect back on that you could have done differently at the time?
Yeah. After viewing the footage and reflecting on what actually happened that day, I think to myself that I could have stood back a bit more, walked away from the situation, because maybe me being a bit closer could have antagonised the gentleman more. But I think it doesn't matter what happened that day. I think he would have just actually still followed me, because he was that way inclined to have a go at me regardless of what. But after viewing that, I think I would walk away a bit more from the situation, just to try and withdraw away from it all completely. I think after this, the thing I would take away from the situation is that at the time, nothing against anybody, but we only had one camera which was down on the other gate closure. That now that when you're on the gate closure, both of you should have a body cam, so if anything happens, you've got it captured there and then, and not having to wait for another body cam to come out, which is nothing against the people at the time who was bringing another body cam out, because obviously you had one on the site and obviously you might not have needed it, but obviously at that time we did need it and we didn't have it, but it eventually got brought out and it actually caught what happened on the second time. It actually got caught on camera. And if anything out of this, if you're going to get in that situation, is to try and withdraw yourself, and at all times be polite courtesy to the gentleman regardless of what barrage or abuse you're going to get, because at the end of the day you don't want to get yourself into trouble by retaliating to that gentleman. After the incident happened, obviously I went home to the wife and I was quite upset a little bit, and when I explained to my wife what had happened, she got quite upset, and both of my boys got quite upset about it. And one of my boys said, "Daddy," said, "you want to be more careful when you go and do that job." He said, "You have to do that job, and as a point, I actually enjoy what I do, and I shouldn't have to put up with that. But however, it happens on a daily basis, unless we're going to start educating people." But I think the biggest thing was that I got upset, my wife got upset about it, and so did my both boys at the time. But it's like I said, it's not hard to go around the diversion for 5 minutes. But obviously on that day, he just took a dislike to me, because my other colleague who was on the other end, who went through a couple of times, and never said anything to him, nothing at all. But so it just must have been me. But I did get upset, but I've got over it, and so has my family's got over it, and it's behind me now, and hopefully he'll get his upcomings one day, because obviously the police are involved, and so hopefully he will get done. What, I don't know, but hopefully he might learn a lesson and might not. After obviously all that's happened, if anybody does actually come and get the same abuse that I had, how small, how large it is, you need to report it straight to your supervisor on the day, and that will go up to the chain of command, and then eventually you will sit down with somebody who will talk you through it, so it doesn't fester and you don't actually keep it on your head all the time. Keep going on, you think you should have this, that and everything, reported it. And if you do report it, the support I've had has been outstanding, and I can't thank anybody enough for what they've done for me so far.